Today's video is sponsored by Sakuraco and TokyoTreat. More on them later. Rob's gyro is actually pretty interesting as far as projectiles go. Normally when it's out and on the ground, it'll spin around for a certain duration before eventually stopping and going away. This can be reset by repeatedly picking it up and dropping it, but this also resets its state, generally. So what if we could just keep it going forever without picking it up? That's what the YouTube channel Basically Round experimented with, whose findings I'm going to relay to English audiences over here, and test out some other things. The stage setup is actually really simple. Just have some wind blowing upwards a bit above the ground, and when you do this, the gyro simply doesn't go away like it normally would, letting us test things that would otherwise be impossible. The big thing we'll be focusing on right now is how the item takes knockback. You'll notice that the first few hits launch it somewhat slowly, but the more I keep beating it to a pulp, the faster and faster it gets launched, suggesting that the gyro has its own cumulative percent value. Even when Rob comes down, picks it up, then drops it again, that value seems to be unchanged, indicated by how it's still getting launched insanely fast. Also, important to note that it's helpful to get hit before you start to attack the gyro, as if you just go right into beating it up, you might clash with it and make it disappear. This wasn't always the case, but it happened more often than not, whereas it never occurred when I had gotten hit first, so just keep that in mind. Now, all of this extra speed is cool and all, but it doesn't really mean much, right? Rob can't do that to his own gyro, and when Ganondorf launches it, it still can't hit Rob because he still technically owns it. That's where we get a third party to come in. So the setup is to just spawn in the gyro, hurt it deeply and personally, then get a third character in position and launch it. And you'll notice that the damage has increased from what you'd normally see, by about double. Which is a big increase, but it's still not that strong. Like, it's not even a little bit satisfying. So I inflicted mechanical harm onto the gyro for even longer, totaling around 50 up smashes. And from this, with a well-placed forward smash, it dealt over 55%. A really solid increase. The finisher hit that's used is definitely a factor as well, but I imagine the raw number of attacks dealt to the gyro beforehand do also play a really big role in its power. Now, I didn't do a billion up smashes, mostly because in one test I turned my brain off while unleashing a flurry of forward smashes, and after about 2 minutes or so of doing this, the gyro just sorta disappeared. I knew this wasn't a timer thing either, as I left the gyro floating in place for like 15 minutes and it didn't go away, so it made me think there was potentially a percent or knockback threshold before it was forcefully removed, but I'll touch up on that a bit later in a more controlled environment. For now, 50 up smashes was still plenty powerful. So how about Roy? Or rather Kirby pretending to be Roy, because his copy ability is actually stronger. Yeah, that's a fun fact if you didn't know that before, Kirby's just built different. So I used a number of up smashes I didn't really bother counting, and I don't think it mattered too much because in the end, when I used a fully charged neutral special, the gyro dealt over 117%. Now we're starting to get into some serious power. But this power can actually go a lot higher, and I'm going to dive into that. But first I want to take a quick moment to thank today's video sponsor, Sakuraco and TokyoTreat. Sakuraco and TokyoTreat are a Japanese snack box that lets you experience Japan in the form of yummy treats in the comfort of your own home. Sakuraco is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that supports local Japanese snack makers. Each box has 20 traditional snacks and even includes teas like this Hokkaido Genmaicha tea and special tableware with this shonzui flower dish. I've gotten a lot of these boxes over the years and I use the tableware more than you'd expect. This month's theme is Holidays in Hokkaido, which invites you to enjoy the holidays in Japan's snowy northern prefecture. It includes comforting, delicious snacks like this milk Danish or this honey apple mochi, which was phenomenal because I love honey. I also really like the edible wrapper too, it stops things from being really sticky. TokyoTreat on the other hand is a fun snack box that features awesome unique flavors from Japan, with each box being filled with Japanese snack items. This month's theme is Very Merry Snackmas, coming with holiday favorites that capture the vibe you'd see in Japan this time of year. It comes with things like these specialty flavored chips, this instant noodle pack that's for okonomiyaki, highly recommended, and my favorite are the limited edition Kit Kats, which always taste way better than what's offered here in the States if I'm being honest. I really love having these around, they are actually so good. And for both of the boxes, you'll get a respective booklet that goes over the history and details of every single item in that box, which includes allergens, so you don't have to be worried about not knowing what it is you're eating. That's how I knew the wrapper was edible. I'm not just eating plastic randomly hoping it's edible. I've always loved the diverse selection of snacks either of these boxes offer, and I think you will too. So if you want to get yourself any, please click the link down in the description to use my code PKBeats for $5 off your first box. That's code PKBeats. And thank you Sakuraco and TokyoTreat for sponsoring today's video. So that 117% is cool and all, but what if we introduced reflectors now? These increase the base power of the gyro astronomically. It's a bit weird in this setting given how you can't reflect it if you've already been hit by it, and once you reflect it, you can't attack it in general, but if someone else then also reflects it, now we can actually start working with this. Many up smashes later, and I remembered that because the other Kazuya reflected this before me, he wouldn't be affected, but also because it was reflected, it was no longer owned by Rob, meaning he was vulnerable to it. And with that, 387% is kind of fat, a little obese. But just like this country, the BMI can go higher, so let's take the reflectors to their limits. And if you're wondering why I'm using Kazuya, it's because his reflector is actually the strongest one in the game by a large margin. You know, because he costs money to play. Also, I thought it was kind of interesting how when Kazuya's attacking the gyro, the visual effects that he normally gets just don't appear. It really shows how important they are because these attacks feel weak and limp without them to accompany. But anyways, with 2 Kazuyas, the limit of reflectors is 4 before it no longer works. So what's the power after that? Oh, we did it! We reached the max! 999% from one single projectile. No spirits or anything attached. Now, I was a little curious to see if the limit could be pushed, like maybe the percent or knockback was technically higher, so I changed up the stage to make it an eternal prison that Rob couldn't escape from, and then did 2 tests. One with the setup you just saw, and another which was the same but used Roy's neutral special to launch the gyro in the end instead. And surprisingly enough, despite not keeping track of the amount of up smashes used, the knockback Rob experience was actually identical between the 2 tests. Like if I overlay the 2 clips, you'll see that they are completely in line. So maybe it won't get even more extra powerful than this, but hey, I accomplished what I sought out to complete, so I'm happy. So let's go back to that mystery case of the gyro disappearing during that one test. I kinda wanted to see if I could replicate this in a more controlled setting, with the best control being Kazuya, again, since his up smash sends the gyro perfectly upwards. And I did this, 200 times? Yeah, it's a few of them. I guarantee this exceeds the number of smash attacks compared to the test where it disappeared for Ganondorf, yet here it seems perfectly fine, even when I start knocking it around with forward smashes. So I guess this phenomenon is going to remain a mystery, and now we can test things a little bit more concretely. For one, I was curious what the exact effect of attacking the gyro was to its damage. So without any counters, I just did a consistent series of up smashes to a forward smash on DK. With 50 up smashes, that gyro dealt 48%. And with 100 up smashes, it dealt 82.5%. When I saw this, it felt like the increase directly correlated to the increase in up smashes, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, so maybe it just keeps on going up. So you know what I did in all of my wisdom? 500 up smashes. Yeah, that was fun. Granted, it only took 8 minutes, but when I used the forward smash and saw that the gyro dealt only 88.5%, it kinda made me wish I just tested 150 up smashes next. Ah, no. Unless you count my purple Joy-Con's battery being depleted as an effect. like maybe it's just that strong it started affecting the controller. Alright, so obviously the implication here is that after a little more than 100 up smashes, probably around like 110 or so, the knockback of the gyro reached its limit, thus also limiting its damage increase. And actually, if we go into training mode and replicate the setting, being free-for-all with staling on, once Kazuya's up smash has reached max staling, it does basically 9% per hit. So, including the hits at the start that are more fresh and thus more powerful, having about 110 or some up smashes be the max gets us to the 999% range. This implies that the gyro has its own percent limit at 999 and it can't go higher. That's, mostly speculative, but it checks out there and it's pretty funny. Also, while you are technically dealing damage to the gyro, it's not like a normal player for a lot of things. Like for instance, Lil Mac can increase a tick of his KO punch gauge with 1 or 2 up smashes, yet even after dozens of them against the gyro, it's not going up at all. This is just how the move works against all items, really, and the same is true for other gauges that would normally go up when you hit a player, so it's not too surprising. Okay, I think that's enough of the fun gyro stuff, so I'm gonna move on to some other nonsense. Starting with something Slimeade mentioned about Pichu on my Discord. Link to that below if you want to join to submit your own facts. Pichu's up special actually has a weird quirk to it when you start getting spirits involved. particularly any effect that has to do with the undamaged state. So undamaged speed or undamaged power, what have you. Given the nature of Pichu, using an undamaged spirit effect goes together about as well as peanut butter and evil jelly. But if you try using your up special while this effect is in place, aka at 0%, the first bit of the move will go basically nowhere. The second half is fine, and any uses after the fact are just completely okay. Plus, nothing weird happens with Pikachu's up special at all. So I think we can pretty easily tell that this is being caused from the game updating your spirit status. After all, it's happening in the middle of the move. You get hurt and you lose the boost you were supposed to have, so I can only guess that the game just doesn't know what to do when you're using the move while your stats are being updated. This isn't universal. If I use other moves that remove the spirit effect, it's not like the movement is completely broken, so I guess it's just for ones that affect your momentum more directly. This is a pretty common thing for stat changes in general. For instance, with this test, while I was goofing around, I noticed that when I got hit with the bolt from thunder around the same time the bunny hood despawned, I would plummet to the ground rather than just levitating for a little bit like you'd normally see. And this is echoed with the spirit thing. When I use the move and get hit, you'll notice Pichu fall down briefly instead of just staying in the air. But I guess once the game is finally properly updated, you go back to hovering, which is why there's this little period where they're floating over the stage for some reason. Next up, did you know that when Toonlink gets KO'd, he has a chance to say... Next, Alex the Weeb brings up something really interesting on my Discord. So what do you think weighs more? A pound of metal or a pound of bunnies? Well, what if I told you the answer was actually bunnies? Basically, as you probably know, the metal effect causes your character's weight to go up, and thus your fall speed is also increased quite noticeably. However, this effect was apparently much more prevalent in past games and was simply toned down going into this one. You know what wasn't toned down though? The fall speed from the bunny hood. So let's use this win setup to compare the fall speeds. And doing that, we can see how the bunny hood fall speed is considerably faster than the metal one, which is just a super weird quirk of how the stats were adjusted going into this game. And yes, the fall speed from both the bunny hood and the metal box do stack with one another, making you go down insanely quickly. Speaking of being metal though, Slippy the Penguin brought up a fact about Wario's up special and Mega Metal Smash. To set the stage, Wario's up special will usually KO Mario around 180% from center stage, give or take. As you might expect when both players are mega sized, the move will essentially KO much later. The same is true when both players are metal. The knockback is clearly less effective. So as you can imagine, when both players are both mega sized and metal, the move is just not going to be KOing even at much higher percents. So why is it that when I now go into custom Mega Metal Smash and use the move there, it's KOing way earlier? Not just slightly earlier, but even earlier than the base move was KOing. I mean, this question is rhetorical because I'm obviously gonna explain it, but I just want to show how silly this is in practice. Not only does this make it stronger than the Mega Metal test from training mode, but it also makes it a lot stronger than even a fully charged waft in this setting, among many other moves. So your first guess might just be multi-hits. Perhaps this setting works with multi-hits in mysterious ways. I chose to go with Samus's up special for this, which normally KOs around 160%, but with both characters being Mega and Metal, the move basically sends Mario nowhere, even at insanely high percents. And this is echoed in the custom Smash version. The move has pitiful knockback, so clearly it's not just a multi-hit thing. And this is the part in testing where I remembered about the concept of moves that ignore weight. I'm not even sure if I've ever learned this before, but it slipped my mind that Wario's up special has this property. Basically, its knockback completely ignores the opponent's weight. So that KOing percent I mentioned earlier, 180%, that's the same range it is for Pichu and for Bowser. An extremely jarring property that a few moves in the game actually share. I'm still not entirely sure how many of these are intentional or not, but it's a thing. A good example to pair with this is Bowser's up special. This also ignores weight, and when we go into the custom Mega Metal Smash game mode and use it, it's also very clearly much stronger than anything else I'm using. An especially fun example of this is Roy's neutral special. If you want to learn more about why Roy's neutral special ignores weight, I've covered it in a past video which I'll have linked in the description. But in this setting, we can see how ineffective his smash attacks are, yet a simple falling nair will easily seal the stock. It's really stupid. So I feel like we can see the logic here, right? In this setting, the character's weights should be considerably higher than usual, and that's how it affects most moves. But for whatever reason, these moves that ignore character weights aren't updating to this new baseline. My imagination tells me that they're considering the opponent's weight to be unchanged, as I guess they were never updated during the match, and thus it treats them as the base weight for that character. Or rather, the base weight of any character, I guess. Because it's not like these moves fully ignore weight, as in the training mode settings, their power was decreased when the Super Mushroom or Metal Box were introduced. Granted, the decrease wasn't as much as you'd expect, given how they could still KO at a somewhat reasonable percent, whereas Samus's up special was rendered basically useless, but still, they were updated. So I guess these types of moves can only comprehend a change in weight when it happens in the middle of a match. And because in Custom Smash it's starting out that way, the moves just don't register it. That's mostly conjecture of course, but given the test I do feel like that logic makes sense. Oh yeah, and I decided to test the opposite too with Mini Smash. Originally I was going to use Wario's up special, but I guess the move just kinda doesn't work in this setting. That might speak for something, but regardless I just went with Roy. The KO potential from training mode when they're both mini is around 160%, which is a little bit lower than normal, but not by too much. However, going into custom Mini Smash, it's not KOing even at 200% or higher, which again could echo the same logic as before. It'd be like if a mini-sized Roy was trying to use the move against a normal-sized Mario, almost. And then I was curious about the literal weight modifiers in Custom Smash, and when that's set to light, and I use neutral air here, the KO range is basically the same as before, around 170%. But for other moves like up tilt, it's KOing like 15% earlier than normal. So once again, the change in weight is usually accounted for in other moves, but for these ones, the weight is being ignored. And I think that's all very neat. Though this specific part should be taken with a grain of salt, as I'm honestly not entirely sure if this custom Smash mode is even supposed to affect like actual character weight, or if it's just gravity, or even like what the difference honestly even is. I just kind of felt like experimenting with it. And with all that incredibly fun stuff, I think I'm gonna end the video there. I hope you had fun today and learned a lot of very pointless trivia. Oh, for anyone who's noticed, yeah, by the time this video is uploaded, I've been doing daily YouTube shorts for the past 2 weeks or so, to honestly surprising success. I wondered how many people are watching this now only because of those shorts. Like maybe you subscribed because of them, or you just clicked on my channel or something. If so, hi! I've got a huge catalog of videos with this exact type of content, so I think you'll be able to find more that you enjoy in this channel. I especially recommend 2 of my supercuts, one for my Wiki Trivia mini-series, and another that I uploaded earlier this year that just has a bunch of my videos in it. But yeah, it's been a fun grind, and I'm actually really glad that area of YouTube is doing well for me. I've always kind of known that my type of content is really well suited for that sort of thing, but I was never sure exactly how successful it'd be or how much work it'd translate to. I mean, I am technically just reusing old content, but I also feel like most of the audience for shorts have very little overlap with my main full video audience. So, if nothing else, it's just a good way to get trivia out there for people who'd otherwise never see it. And I actually do record new scripts for a lot of those shorts. Not all, but a lot of them. You know, just to make them more succinct or easy to understand. So you can expect more of that from this channel to accompany the usual stream of full-length videos like you're used to, and I hope you enjoy that. Also, I hope you enjoy that set of snack boxes, Sakuraco and TokyoTreat, which sponsored today's video. It actually helps out the channel a lot if you use my links to get $5 off your first box. I'd highly recommend it. But enough rambling and plugging, and I'd like to thank my patrons Raighne, So700, Burbo, and everyone else for their support. Stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.